good to see you guys today. I am Melissa and I am a grieving mother. And today my video is going to be about actually a little bit more funner topic, or definitely a way more positive one, that's for sure, is supportive family. My last video I was talking about unsupportive family. And that was definitely a harder video to make. And honestly, I'm not really that proud of that video. Probably because airing some dirty laundry kind of a thing. And nobody, I don't think, really feels good about doing that. You know, we don't really like to have to, let people know that family is very disappointing. But we also, with that being said, we also have family, though, that have been very, very supportive. We have. And I really just wanted to make sure I took the time to acknowledge that. And, family has made all the difference for me and my husband in our grief, and grief turns out to be a place none of us know until we reach it. It just is. And I even said that in my other video, like, I did not understand grief. And I cringe when I think about some of the ridiculous things I said to people in their grief to try to comfort them. And so grief just turns out to be a place where none of us know until we get there. That's just how that goes. And I don't know what I would have done without my mother. That is a fact. My mother and Vinny's parents. Next video, I'm going to talk about friends. And so my church slides right into that. Church is definitely with family and friends. But today, I'm just kind of talking a little bit more specifically on family. And they have been super supportive. And I say that with a lot of humility, because I understand that many grieving people don't have supportive family behind them. And I think it's a little bit extra trickier in situations where the loss is, we kind of all share it. They're Noah and Sophia, our two youngest children who were murdered. That is our deep, deep loss for me and my husband, and for Elijah and Hannah. And it's also a loss for my mother, for my father, for Vinny's parents, for Vinny's family, and for my family. It's a loss. We all, we're family. So it seems like it's just even extra trickier because we're all grieving the loss of Noah and Sophia. And now we're grieving, on my side of the family, grieving the loss of my mother and our father. My mother died December of 2020, and my father died literally 3 months to the day after my mom died. So it has been an awful last year and a half. The last 4 years have been tumultuous. And my mother really was a support rock for me. I was a total hot mess, still am. And I think that just not even having her here is very hard, because she was extremely supportive. And she lived with us too when this happened. So for the last 3.5 years, she lived with us before she died. And, I could hardly think, I could barely talk. And, my mother and my church family and Vinny's parents, they kept on top of things. They did for us at the very beginning. They did a lot of calling, a lot of texting, checking on us, doing what they could to basically prop me up, prop me and Vinny up. And what I also find extremely admirable when I think about and look back is how strong the Lord enabled my husband to be. I mean, he took on a lot of responsibility at the beginning, and just stayed really busy with details, whether it was dealing with the media or the newspaper people or the funeral home or the cemetery or the headstone. My husband was very involved in all of those areas with my mother and his parents and our church. And a little background real quick is I was born and raised in Lincoln, Nebraska. And we've only lived in Colorado for 7 years now. We're going on the 7th year, which, oh my goodness, when I think about that just, especially since 4 of these years are in heavy grief without Fifi and Nodi. So Oh, it's weird. It is weird to think of living here 7 years. And yet it feels like we've been here forever at times. But I have a wonderful church family in Lincoln. And those bonds I still have to this day. And the Lord gave us a beautiful church family here in Colorado Springs. And they just stepped right up the day our children were murdered. And they showed up at my grandparents' my in-laws' house, my husband's grandparents' house. And for the first full year, they held our hands. They were so readily available. You could call them for anything, even help with the hotel room. And, people helped my siblings with car repairs and all kinds of things to get people here for the funeral, to keep us well fed and taken care of. And even afterwards. Oh, friends, it's a beautiful, beautiful, beautiful thing. And sometimes my heart is so heavy when I encounter and think of so many other families that were not given such a beautiful blessing of supportive family, and, my mother's love and the love of our family and church, their love slowly injected life back into our souls. Yeah. Yeah. So like I said, and some of us family members are supportive, and then other of us, they're just way less helpful. And I got that in my family too. So, our family, like I said in my other video, we weren't all supportive. We had some that were extremely unsupportive and not helpful, but then there were others that were very, very helpful. Have you guys ever noticed that there's like somebody always in our family that can just show up? Right? They just know how to hold their tongues. They seem to be more comfortable with grief. It's interesting. And my mother was definitely that person. She knew how to hold her tongue in her older years because she was a spitfire in her younger years raising us. Oh, but my mother had settled down in her late 40s and 50s and 60s, settled down much so, And then other people also try to run away. They try to fix it, or they attempt to pull us out of our pain, and so many of us have at least that one family member who they just shine, when it comes into a crisis, and they just love people who are hurting. They win the prize for showing up, right? And they just these folks, they may not say much, but they're always available, and their presence is comforting. Does anyone have anyone in your life like that you can think of? Oh, my mother. That's who that was for me, was my mother. Yeah. And my husband is a nice runner-up next to my mother. They don't always say much. They don't run away. They're not trying to fix you or pull you out of your pain, but they're available. They're there. And they're present. Something about them, just being there, is comforting. Yeah. I've got some friends like that too. I really do. And some family, they cry with us too. My mother cried with me. She was the only family member that did cry with me outside of my husband. But my mom entered in and she got her hands dirty. Some family does that, don't they? Some family members, they just know how to do that. And shout out to those, for real. We don't want to take those people for granted at all in our family units. Those people, they babysit, they make meals, they run errands, they give you money, they pay your bills, they pay rent. They get their hands dirty. They are tangibly helping you in real tangible ways. They don't force themselves on you, but they're willing and they're ready. Like I said, they'll call, they'll text, email, they listen. And that's who my mother was to me. And my grief is so heavy without my mother. I mean, this is who my mother is and what she was to me in my grief. She was incredibly helpful and encouraging, incredibly so. And you know what? So were Vinny's parents. I mean, they stepped right in. They showed up that first day at the funeral home. I have my mother, I have my in-laws, I have my church. Yeah, we were not left alone. They bolstered our sense of hope. They did. They did. They don't push, they don't pull. They just merely walk alongside us. You know, some of us, like I said, we've got tons of supportive family, and others have a few, and others have none at all. So I am mindful of that. I am mindful of that. All of us have a different set of needs and circumstances. So what's supportive, and when it's supportive, it isn't a one size fits all kind of a thing. You know what I'm saying? It's just not. This is difficult. It's even impossible for some family members to navigate. And that's what I am discovering in my 4th year of my grief. And that I had some very high unmet expectations of some family members in my grief. And I still do. And the Lord is walking me through this, you know, that this is impossible for some of these family members to navigate, you know. And I had to ask myself, do I have specific expectations? Like, do I want family to call? Do I want them to text me? Do I want them to come over? You know, those were things I had to really get honest with myself. And guess what? It changes. It changes all the time, even in the same day. You know, and who did I want to call me, and how often? What kind of help do I want and need? From whom and how much? Actually, this was so much of these questions, even still 4 years in my grief, I can't really always answer. I don't always know what I need or want, or how much of it I might need or want, and from whom. Oh my goodness. Of course, we're in a grief state. We're like, it's grief brain. So trying to talk about these things, they just seem about as doable as a solo climb on Mount Everest. That's my opinion. That's about how doable talking about those things are. You know, they're not, you know. So however, you know, if we possibly care about time and energy to think, create, we need to carve out some time and energy to think and communicate about these things. We really do. And I know when I would talk these things out with my mother, I reaped good results. When I was able to express to her what I needed, when I needed it, how much of it I needed it. You know, she would even help me walk through what it was I was even needing in my moment. Supportive family makes a massive impact in our grief process. Massively so. So if you are that family member that is so supportive, and you know you're the one that shows up, you listen, you are there, you are helping, you are supportive, your crown is beautiful. And don't underestimate your role. Do not underestimate the way that you prop us up in grief. Never underestimate that text message, that phone call, the card in the mail, an email. Don't underestimate any of those little things that you do for another grieving person, because it means so much to our shattered hearts. They do. They're treasures beyond treasures. And we treasure things so differently in grief than before grief. You know? And I just think it's so sad that if we don't have supportive family, also on another note, it is sad, but thank goodness, thank God for other loving, compassionate, and caring people that are out there. They are out there. It is not left only up to our family to comfort us and to console us and support us. And the Lord knows who's capable of doing such a thing. And by his wonderful grace, he just brings other people alongside of us that are able to. He does. He does. He does. I used to tell my mom, like, dang, Mom, I'm hurting, but don't know what I need. All I can think about is Sophia and Noah. Does anyone else feel that way about the death of your child, your grief, your loss? It's like it's hard to communicate to people what we need. All we're thinking about is our children. And so that's always the first need that comes right away. Well, what do you need? Well, I need my children back. I need Malik not to be in prison. And those needs will not be met on this earth. In this earthly life, those needs will not be met. Oh, friends, on a scale of 1 to 10, with 10 being amazing, how supportive has your family been in your grief process? Yeah. With regard to family support, what has been helpful to you and what hasn't been helpful? Feel free to email me. Feel free to leave me a comment. Are there ways families could be more helpful to you, and how so? Or is there any way you are able to be specific about how much more help or help you do need from your family? I'm not always able to be specific. Sometimes I just find myself feeling like, I don't know what I need. I just need my children. I just need my life to be back. I just need my house back, and I need all 5 of my children back. And yeah, and that's a lot of what us grievers are thinking. And I know some family gets pretty exasperated with us because we're not able to communicate what we need and want all the time. Thank you, Jesus, for my mother. And thank you, Lord, for my husband. Those are the 2 people in my life that just show up, that are just there. Wow. Oh, are there family members you are willing to communicate your needs and desires to? That's a loaded question, because I promise you, in my family, there are some people that I wouldn't communicate that to. They would manipulate it, misuse it. Yeah. My feelings aren't safe with some family members. So, yeah. So there might be some people that we ain't trying to talk to about this, and that's okay. That's all right, because we're not able to change that family member to be the person that we need to talk to. So, some relatives, they are just rock stars, aren't they? They're rock stars. They're stellar when disaster strikes. And others aren't. So we got to lean on those who show up and make themselves available. We just need to lean on those people who show up and they make themselves available to us. Those are the ones that we can lean on in our grief. None of us should have to walk this road alone. Not at all. And we know the Lord. I know the Lord is in my grief. But he's also invisible, and I can't see him. And so I thank him that he brings his love to me in real, tangible ways through my husband, my mother, family members, my friends, my best friends, my church, my community, my children's schools, the teachers and the principals. Those guys love on us. They are supportive of us. Yeah. They sure are. They sure are. We need people who will sit with us and listen. We need to talk about Noah and Sophia. I need to talk about them. And I am very thrilled when others do the same. When others are willing to want to sit down with me and talk about Noah and Sophia, or make reference to Noah and Sophia, or when I make a reference about Noah and Sophia, they don't ignore that reference. They acknowledge that I said something. and then they say something back. I've got friends who do that, and one of my best friends, she lives in Lincoln, but she'll say something what's going on in her family with her kids, and then I'll say, oh, that reminds me of Noah, or oh, your little one reminds me so much of Noah when Noah was that age. And she knows my children very well. I mean, she even helped take care of them. She even had Noah when Noah was a week old because I had an appointment. But anyways, and she'll say, oh yeah, I remember when Noah was like that, and then she'll tell me a memory of Noah. I love that. I love when people remind me of Noah and Sophia, when they've got something in them that they had an interaction with them and they remind me of it. So I want to encourage you, do not be afraid to bring up your grieving friend's child, or whoever it is in your life. Their child is dead. Don't be afraid to talk about their child. They want to, they need to, and we must. And that is definitely one way to be very supportive. So, well, that's it for today, friends. But I'll tell you what, I am so grateful for my mother. And beyond measure am I grateful for her. She left me a wonderful example that I can only hope to imitate for my children, my teenagers, and in their adult life. And I just feel extra lonely here without her. Real extra lonely without being able to go to her room. I found my text messages from her today, this morning, and a full year's worth on my phone. Yeah. Just reading back everything of our normal life together. Every day we spoke. Every day. Of course, it helped she lived with me for 3.5 years, but even prior to that, every day we spoke. Every day. Every day. Whether it was for 5 minutes or 2-3 hours. Yeah. So in grief, when such a strong, supportive person dies, grief piled on grief, swimming against a current is what I definitely feel like. Yeah. Well, brothers and sisters, be well today and be blessed. And I will see you on my next video.